Hello, my name is Paul Brooks and I'm Sunday school teacher for the North Greensboro Church of God. This video is a tool to use for those studying Lesson 5 in our Adult Sunday School guide. With the encouragement and guidance of our pastor, Dr. Bill Coble, I'm presenting a series of short videos to help the members and guests of our Sunday school class continue their lessons and their Bible studies during this time when we're unable to meet together in person due to the guidance and orders designed to protect us from this coronavirus and its spread. So this unit of study which we're currently in is the prophecies of Daniel. Lesson 5 for this spring, this Sunday's lesson, is titled The Vision of the Ram and the Goat. It comes from the scriptures from Daniel chapter 8. The message for this lesson is that God has perfect knowledge of future events. Our focus should be to analyze Daniel's vision, to understand its meanings, and to worship the Lord as the King of Kings. This video will focus on the context for this lesson as a tool to help us in our understanding. So let's start with the persons that we encounter in chapter 8. Well, of course, there's Daniel. We discussed who Daniel was and how he came to be in Babylon in a previous lesson. At the time of this vision, King Nebuchadnezzar had already died. After a few other leaders reigned for short times, his grandson, some believe that it could have been his son, Belshazzar, took control of Babylon and reigned for about 15 years according to world history. Daniel served this king as he had served King Nebuchadnezzar. We learn from history the empires and persons who fulfilled the representation of the animals in Daniel's vision in chapter 8. The two horns of the ram represented the joint empire of the Medes and the Persians. The larger horn represents King Cyrus and the Persians who took over the empire. The goat with the one notable horn represents the ancient Greek Macedonian Empire led by Alexander the Great. Alexander's conquest led to the Hellenistic Empire that ruled from the Mediterranean through Eastern Asia to India, from the conquest of the Persians until the rise of the Roman Empire. In verse 7, we read that the goat moved against the ram with chlora. Don't be thrown off by this medieval word. Read it as with bitterness and anger. The great horn of the goat being broken in verse 8 foretold of King Alexander's death. The four smaller horns that grew in its place was fulfilled by Alexander's four generals, among whom the empire was then divided, but none of them rose as powerful as Alexander had been. In verse 23 to 25, we learn of the king with fierce countenance and understanding of dark sentences, who stood up to power. This foretold of King Antiochus and of his severe persecution of God's people and the desecration of the temple. This Greek king was destroyed by God without hand, meaning without using human hand. Antiochus died insane in Persia. We see in verse 15 to 16 that the angel Gabriel was sent to Daniel to interpret his vision. Gabriel had the appearance of a man, but Daniel knew who he was and that he was a messenger from God. So what was the time and place of this vision? Well, Daniel tells us. He tells us that this vision came to him in the 3rd year of Belshazzar's reign. This then was 2 years after Daniel's dream in chapter 7. It's believed that Belshazzar came to rule around 553 BC. Daniel was in Babylon at the time. As to the content and style for the scriptures in this lesson, we need to keep a few things in mind. As stated in a previous video, much of the Old Testament prophecy can have two meanings or be directed to two audiences. This chapter can clearly be proven to be about historical events that later occurred and which had tremendous impact upon God's people and the world. It can also be read as prophetic of the end times, with the rise and fall of the beast, the Antichrist. Now, this is a good place to point out again that we should read all of the chapters of the book of Daniel to gain a fuller understanding of his writings. Each chapter builds upon the previous chapter. Each dream or vision builds upon previous dreams and visions. So what? What now? This is how I end all of my Sunday school classes. So what? What did this all mean? And what now? What should we do about it or because of it? Well, the main content, again, is that although God's people will face opposition, persecution, and tribulation, and although many evil empires of man will rise and fall, God conquers all evil and provides an eternal life and kingdom for his faithful. The fulfillment of Daniel's visions is proof that God knows all things, past, present, and future. Therefore, he knows all things about us. There are no secrets before God. He knows of all events, and he uses events and people to fulfill his purpose and plan. So what? What now? What do we do now? We should live by faith in the face of opposition and persecution, and we should humbly acknowledge God in all things. We should trust in him completely to give direction to our lives and trust in his promise of eternal life and his eternal kingdom. I hope you'll enjoy your study of Lesson 5, The Vision of the Ram and the Goat. Be watching for more video posts next week as we move on to Lesson 6, The Prophecy About 70 Weeks. The message for this next lesson is that God works through intercessory prayer to draw people to himself. So thanks, and may God bless you and keep you and your loved ones safe.